All black, everything black. Culture over everything, y'all. We taking it back. Black.
Welcome to Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. Joining us, you are, for season 15 of Left to Black. And it is wonderful and a joy to welcome Mr. Lamont Jones, who is the author of the Gist of Bid Whist, the culturally rich card game from Black America. How you doing today, Lamont?
Mark, it's an honor to be here with you, brother. Appreciate you having me.
So let's start with this, right? I'm a novice, right? I don't play card games, right?
Yes.
But I went to a high school where lunchtime, all the black kids are sitting around the table playing spades. I actually didn't learn how to play spades until I was 50 years old, right? And then I think I played 2 games and not very well.
Yeah.
What is it about black folks and card games? Like, I always felt that I was outside something, that there was a community that I never was able to broach because I couldn't play card games. But what is it about Black America and these card games?
Man, I think the thing about it is they're so accessible. They're accessible. They're fun, right? They're wonderful vehicles for personal connection, for bonding, for fun, for smack talk, for exhibiting your skills, right? Your intelligence. So yeah, they are, because they're so accessible, because they're so sticky, I think that's what makes them attractive. And I will say, it's never too late, man. I wish this book had been around for you earlier, Mark, because it's to welcome people to the world and the joy of card games.
I mean, that's one of the things I think I enjoy most about the book. It is this twofold dynamic, right? It's helping you along to understand the game, but also placing the game and the playing of it in this larger cultural and historical context as it relates to Black Americans, right? So the immediate question that I think even novices would ask, what's the difference between spades and bid whist?
I love it. I love it. And I'll say to your point about, the larger cultural context, I played for a decade, just loving bid whist, just enjoying the camaraderie, enjoying the competition before I started to learn that it had these deep cultural roots.
Okay.
And when I learned that really sort of turbocharged my interest in the game. But the immediate difference between spades and bid whist is this. In spades, right? If you get set in a hand early, the game goes on to 500 points, right? So you have to keep playing and you try to resort to some exotic gambits to try to catch up. The other team gets more conservative, but the game's pretty much over. In bid whist, there's what I like to call the knockout factor. So no matter who's winning, no matter what the score is, in any given hand, at any given time, either team can get the right collection of cards, put it together, and win the game. So I think that keeps the game lively. It keeps it taut. It keeps it intense. That knockout factor, which I think also exists in the sport of boxing, is what separates bid whist from spades.
And I love the way you say it, right? Because I'm like bid whist. You're like bid whist, right?
Yeah.
Elongating the sound, right? And what's the history of this game? Where does bid whist come from?
See, now you caught me here because for years I didn't know it was called bid whist, right?
What did you think it was?
Yeah,
bid.
We called it bid. That's all we say. Hey, you want to play some bid? We're gonna play some bid. I've heard biz whiz. I've heard big whiz. Whatever. But the game has these deep roots because it comes from a game that was the most popular game in the whole world during the 1600s and the 1700s and the 1800s. And that was a game called whist, right?
Whist.
And whist is the tree. And the games we play now, bid whist, spades, hearts, euchre, bridge, these are all the branches on the tree whist. Of original whist. So I think that bid whist is sort of a remix of original whist and some of the other games on the original whist tree.
I mean, you just mentioned, bridge. And, when I think bridge, I think 50-year-old white women, at lunchtime, right?
Yeah.
When their husband's at work, they come over and they play bridge.
No doubt.
So it seems to be something really, really culturally specific about bid whist.
Yeah. Well, I'll point out that the oldest bridge organization in the country is called the American Bridge Association. It's a Black organization, right? And it's an organization that grew out of the American Tennis Association, the same group and league an ecosystem that produced Arthur Ashe. But in 1932, I think it was, some tennis players, some black tennis players, weren't allowed to go play bridge at one of the facilities where they were playing. So they started their own organization, the American Bridge Association, which exists now. But yeah, to your point, though, I do think that I like to analogize bid whist, right, and compare it to other card games as Whitney's version of "I Will Always Love You" compares to Dolly's version, right? Dolly's version is excellent. It's that strong foundation. When you put that extra musicality, that extra soul from Whitney, you get something extra special. And I think that the way bid whist is remixed, the twists that it adds, I think that separates it from other games.
One of the more fascinating aspects of the story that you tell of this game is the role of the Pullman Porters. And, as we're having this conversation, folks around the country are watching Skip Gates's, new series on PBS about Great Migrations.
Yes.
And in many ways, the Pullman Porters were the Black community's secret weapons in so many ways. Yes. Getting the Chicago Defender from Chicago down south, sending the message about how important the Great Migration was and opportunities for Black folks. Records are going back and forth so folks deep in the South can hear what Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington do. I mean, they really are the folks who hold a lot together. And it's also an entry point, right? If you're a Black man, if you're not going to be a lawyer or a doctor or a musician, the Pullman Porters were an entry point
to the middle class,
to the Black middle class, right? A. Philip Randolph, first major Black labor union. I mean, we could go on and on, but yet they give us this other gift, right? Yes. They give us bid whist. Talk a little bit about the role of the Pullman Porters in this story.
Man, thank you so much for celebrating the Porters. As this is the centennial of the founding, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters was founded in 1925, so right. 100 years on. So I think about the heroic impact that the Porters, that the Brotherhood and the Porters in general made on American society and American democracy. But as you point out, they made an immense contribution to bid whist. And I hope we get back to, though, how bid whist contributed to the Porters' successes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the Porters, you might have a situation where you have 200, 300, 400 Porters laying over in one city, getting ready to depart all across the country to different cities the next day. And on those occasions, right, that's when they got together. That's when they played their game, the Porters game, they called it, bid whist, right? And, when they're on the trains, they're confined to these sort of rigid rules dictated, mandated by segregation and that sort of thing. But when they're in these settings, right, they can revel in their full humanity and they can express their intelligence and their verbal wit, right, and their mathematical acumen and that sort of thing. So that's when they got down with bid whist. And as you point out, because they were such respected figures across the country, their game began to take hold in communities across the country. The Pullman Porters were the singular force in popularizing bid whist, and I'm honored to salute them on the cover of the Gist of Bid Whist.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question, a more technical question about what inspired you to write this book, and talk about some of the challenges, because I'm sure there are many mainstream presses that, you present them with this project. They're like, we don't know what this is. We don't think it's important. We don't think there's a readership for it, right? But you obviously felt compelled enough to tell the story that you found a way to get this out into the world.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. I think it became important to me to share this when I really realized that bid whist is more than just a game, right? It's a cultural force. And several things happened to sort of bring me to that realization, starting in law school, right? On the very first day of law school, I met a couple brothers and they were like, hey, you guys want to play some cards? And I said, hey, we can bust some spades right now. That's what I do. That's what we do in Oklahoma, right? They said, oh, we got something different for you, bro, right? So Randy, Terry, and Sean at Columbia Law School, they claim they taught me to play. I don't give them that credit, right? I say they introduced me to the game. But and then a few years after law school, I found myself in Los Angeles, and I was talking with the friend of one of my law firm colleagues, with the dad of one of my law firm colleagues. And I said, hey, Judge Meggs, you ever heard of a game called bid whist? Man, that man jammed his finger in my chest. He said, I went to Nam because of Bid Whist, right? And he explained that he'd been in college and that because he was a student, he was exempt from the draft, but he played so much cards in the student union, that his grades dipped and he got sent to college, got sent to the war. So, and then not long after that, I was at a party and someone mentioned to me that the Pullman Porters had been important in popularizing Bid Whist. Just sort of an offhanded comment, and that started me down sort of a research trail. And then finally, I'll say that several years even after that, my daughter was about 8 years old. Her mom and I had gone through divorce, and I think your daughter's probably around the same age as my daughter from reading some of your books, but. She was taught. We had her seeing a therapist, and she explained to the therapist that on the weekends and in the summers, in the holidays, she's spending time with her dad, and we were playing cards and that sort of thing. And she explained that she's sad and upset and angry about her new life. And the therapist says, "Have you told anybody about these feelings?" And Aaliyah, in her 8-year-old way, says, "I told my daddy." Well, why'd you tell him? Because when we're together, we're playing a lot of cards. And when you're playing cards, sitting there, you got to talk about something, right? So that really sort of reinforced for me, again, that these games that we love, this game that we love, is about so much more than just the competition.
Therapeutic,
it's also about,
right? Therapeutic, right?
The connection, the bonding. So absolutely that. And to your point about, you're right, man. I think I must have written every agent in the country. I think I must have sent proposals to every publisher in the country. But it only takes one. And fortunately, we got one.
Are you concerned at this moment, when so many of our young folks and quite honestly, a bunch of us old heads are always on our handheld devices, we're always facing screens, is there that same spirit of coming together, that marked your experience with as a young graduate student, finding 3 other Black men? We all have college stories, going to college and playing dominoes or spades or something like this need to come together as a whole. And, some of it is post-COVID stuff, but we started to see these dynamics even before COVID. Are you concerned that there's not this commitment to assembly, if you will, amongst younger Black folks that would allow for these kind of games and these stories, all these things that come out of us coming together, that we're losing some of that cultural history in the context of not feeling the same need to come together the way we did in previous generations? Absolutely,
man. That's something I'm hoping to contribute. I'm hoping to help position Bid Whist as a force for bringing people together, right? As a force for that sort of fellowship and as a force for that sort of connection and that sort of joy that it's provided to me and so many people I know and love. And I think the game is sticky enough to do that. And I'm trying to shine a light on situations where I see it happen. So, for example, there's a group of brothers in Westchester, New York, who have gotten together each month for the past 30 years. All right. They took a few months off at the beginning of COVID, but they've gotten together once a month to play Bid Whist. Right. And they've now invited me a few times since I've moved to the East Coast. And what happens is we get together and we play cards for a couple hours, and then there's a dinner. There's a full sit-down dinner, right? And there's an agenda, and we talk about issues and, hey, what can we transmit to young people? How can we help? How can we contribute? But that sort of bonding, I think, is vital. And if we can help contribute to that, that would be time well spent.
How has it been for you traveling around the country with this book and introducing Bid Whist to audiences and talking about the book and the history of Bid Whist to audiences?
Man, first of all, there's always smack talk, right? There's always somebody in the audience who says, "Hey, man, they tell me that on the day I was born, they pulled my mom away from the Bid Whist table and she was screaming, and they don't know whether she was screaming because she was in labor because they messed up the Boston she was running, but that sort of thing." So there's always that. There's always joy. Like, we do a little workshop. We leave spaces for people to play. And almost invariably, there's not enough time for people to, play and talk and have as much fun as they want to have.
Now, by profession, you're not a writer.
Yes, correct.
Right. How did you manage your professional career with this need to write this book at the same time?
Man, well, as you know, I work in the fight game. I work with Al Heyman's Premier Boxing Champions, and I'm sure you're familiar with Al's work in the music industry. Before he began to dominate the fight game. But the good thing about that is, man, there's lots of travel. So there's lots of plane time. There's lots of hotel time. There's still time, to dream and to write and that sort of thing. My secret weapon in this endeavor, though, was, once we finally landed a publishing company willing to take on this project, and I had a deadline, my daughter, Aliyah, who, my favorite bid whist partner, man, she edited very lovingly, very exactingly each and every chapter, which was a little weird, right? Because, when she was, from the time she was 8 until about 12 or so, she was my primary partner, right? Yeah. But then she becomes a teenager. She's doing her own thing. She only plays bid whist with dad on his birthday and holidays and that sort of thing. But for her to come back and help me get this project over the finish line, you talk about meditations on fatherhood. That was something that was really really touching and meaningful for me.
So you got another book in you?
I think there needs to be more bid whist literature, right? So I definitely want to contribute to that. But man, the boxing space provides lots of great stories, stuff that we might need to explore. So I'd certainly be open to exploring that.
Yeah, I'd be remiss not to ask you about the boxing piece because, again, we're of a generation when boxing had such a foothold in the Black community. I mean, heavyweight boxing champions, from Ali, the Joe Frazier's, the Sugar Ray Leonards, yes. Right? The Larry Holmes, Mike Tyson, of course. I mean, they were held in such high esteem amongst the Black community, and particularly young Black men, right? I think even more so, you go to the mid 1970s. I mean, Black boxers were more significant to young Black men than NBA players were. No question. Right? To be quite honest. And, do you feel that the fight game still has that same cachet within the Black community? And if it's not, right, is it a byproduct of just, folks moving on? Is it folks coming to terms with the kind of, because sometimes we think about the brutality of the sport, right? We don't think about the art of the sport, right? Yes, I'm always fascinated when I talk to young folks about Jack Johnson, and you see these images of Jack Johnson and you think that he's a bruiser. Yes. Right. But no, what he was a tactical fighter, right? No and so doubt. There's an art, we talk about the art of the science, right?
No doubt.
The science of boxing, right? What do you attribute this kind of reason why boxing no longer has that foothold in the Black community's imagination?
Yeah. Two things I want to say about it. First of all, I think that the person who in the 70s and the 80s would have been the heavyweight champion of the world, right? That person is now, a tight end in the NFL, or maybe a power forward on a college basketball team. Yep. But there are other opportunities. Boxing is a rough hustle. It's a hard hustle, and people have other opportunities. And, it's really interesting to me that if you go back through the 20th century, you can tell who was at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder by who was at the top of the boxing ladder, right? So early on, Jewish fighters were doing well, and Irish fighters were doing well, right? Then the Italian fighters, then Black fighters, Hispanic fighters. Now, man, some of my favorite fighters and some of the fighters who are the roughest are fighters from Eastern Europe, growing up in war-torn environments and that sort of thing. So I think that's a big part of it. I will say, though, man, that you mentioned the art and the science of it.
Sweet science, yeah.
The sweet science. A lot of the stories in the Gist of Bid Whist, a lot of my thinking about playing bid whist comes from boxing, right? I think about Robert Greene talks about the 48 laws of power, and that 48th law is assume formlessness, right? And when I think about that, I think about Floyd Mayweather and how he moves instantaneously from offense to defense, how he's got all the tools in his arsenal, right? The best bid whist players are like that, right? They're flexible, they're creative. You don't know whether they're going to be aggressive or whether they're going to lay back and lure you in, right? So you have to be alert for that. So I think that the best bid whist players are like the best boxers in terms of their creativity and their strategy. And like I mentioned earlier, Bid Whist, unlike any other game, any other card game, it's got that knockout factor, right? So so I think the parallels between boxing and Bid Whist are ample.
The name of the book is The Gist of Bid Whist.
Yes, sir.
The culturally rich card game from Black America. The author is Lamont Jones, who joined us today on Left of Black. Man, I'm glad we had this opportunity to talk about this great book. And best of luck, getting it to more people's hands and getting more folks out there, playing the game that brings us together.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me. Thank you for having me. I look forward to sitting down with you and partnering with you to play some cards.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Blacks, they be hyping, I'm the light that lit your match. A black watch for all the times I watch MTV raps. Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black everything black. Culture over everything, y'all. We taking it back.